This is the Pyro. Real name... The Pyro... Job, Pyrotechnics. And this will be the complete history of the Pyro. Which character this video would be about was actually determined this time around by a YouTube poll, which ended up getting 9,000 votes. Soldier actually started off with a pretty solid lead, then it was tied for a while, and at the time of making this, the Pyro was won with 38% of the vote. Which explains why you're watching a video about the history of Pyro. And I guess we're gonna get right into it. Concept art of Pyro has always kept it in a fire retardant suit and a head covering of some kind. While a lot of the early illustrations don't differ that much from what we got, there's notably two pieces of concept art that show a face for Pyro, appearing to be a bald man with a large nose. But unfortunately, there's no real information on how or why Pyro was changed as a character from the early stages. So we're just kinda stuck with some pictures of a weird guy with a big nose. The Pyro is voiced by Dennis Bateman, who also voices the Spy. As he was recording his lines for Spy, it was brought up by Valve that there was another character in the game who doesn't exactly speak, but makes sounds. They asked if he wanted to try out for it, and, well, that's how Pyro got its voice. Or mumbles. Interestingly, according to Bateman, Pyro has actual written lines, but they're spoken underneath his hand to get that muffled effect. If you came here looking for some background information on Pyro as a character, there isn't any. Pyro is just as big a mystery now as it was when the game first came out. Maybe even more so. Pyro started off pretty much just being a crazy guy who liked fire and talked in a mostly ununderstandable mumble. By comparison, Pyro was a relatively underdeveloped character when compared to the rest of the cast, but not without personality. It wasn't until Meet the Pyro in 2012 where we really learned the extent of Pyro's sanity, or lack thereof. Where the other mercenaries are, knowingly mercenaries who appear to enjoy killing people, Pyro seems to have no knowledge of what it's actually doing, and lives in its own fantasy world where it thinks it's being friendly and playing, when it's actually murdering people. And most of Pyro's delusions seem to relate directly to fire. In the comic Ring of Fire, when Pyro loses its job and is put in a position without fire in its life, we see it become a very successful CEO of Frontier Engineering. Though Pyro apparently views this fireless life as dull and grey. Still in its own weird cartoony world, but just monotone and boring. Pyro is somehow a very good business person, but appears to have very little interest in that life, and leaves immediately after seeing Soldier and Miss Pauling light a fire to get its attention. Which kinda makes me wonder if Pyro's even paid to be a mercenary. Does it even view that as a job? I mean, they're basically arming an insane person who has an incredibly skewed concept of what's actually happening. It's a little bit messed up if you think about it. And Pyro's teammates don't even seem to like the Pyro and are disturbed by it. After all, Heavy fears no man, but that thing scares him. Scout doesn't want to talk about Pyro and calls it a freak. Spy shudders to imagine what inhuman thoughts lie behind that mask. Soldier doesn't like when Pyro goes on his side of the car, or when Pyro cuts off his hand. Heavy is nice to Pyro once in the Showdown comic, but that's only when he's trying to bribe Pyro into letting him get new weapons first. The only people who are consistently nice to Pyro are Miss Pauling and the Engineer, who both treat it like a kid. Though, to be fair, Pyro does have a very childlike mind and interests. In the True Meaning comic, we see Engineer read Pyro the story of Australian Christmas, and the way Miss Pauling talks to Pyro is very much in the way someone might talk to a child.
Hi, Pyro. I've got something I need you to do, okay, buddy?
So obviously we don't have any idea what the Pyro's name is, where it's from, or even what it looks like. I remember way back when the old Guadalajara was added in 2010, a few people thought that was some kind of hint that Pyro was Mexican, but of course since then Pyro has essentially become a blank slate for cosmetics where pretty much anything goes on it. And even then, just wearing a sombrero doesn't exactly mean much. Delman has one too now, so... What's sort of interesting is that the Pyrovision goggles item that makes you see the world like Pyro has the same optical mask text written across it that the Pyro's default gas mask does. So I guess it's possible that the mask itself directly relates to what Pyro sees. The only time we kinda come close to seeing Pyro take off its mask is in artwork included with the Fight Song's vinyl record, where the picture is conveniently burned off. And of course, it's not just what the Pyro looks like that's a mystery, we don't even know what the Pyro's gender is. Though I suppose knowing what it looks like would probably answer that question too. Over the years, the TF2 team has made several hints about what the Pyro's gender actually is. And what we're gonna do now is go over as many of those hints as I could find. Perhaps what started the whole debate is the fact that Pyro's locker contains a small handbag with a flower on it, something stereotypically girly. Pyro's description on the TF2 trading cards and the TF2 website uses male pronouns throughout it, but ends with the sentence, Either way, he's a fearsome, inscrutable, on-fire Frankenstein of a man. If he even is a man. After the Sniper vs. Spy update in 2009, an unused female face texture was found within TF2's files. It's still unknown what this was meant for, but some speculated that it was actually meant for Pyro, though that seems unlikely to me. Several classes' domination or revenge lines towards Pyro refer to Pyro in feminine ways.
Ha! You fight like a girl! Go home, lassie! Men are fighting here!
Sorry, ma'am.
Thanks for the warm-up, sister. Ooh, got you right in the ovary. You know what you and Jane Austen have in common? You're both dead women.
Good lord, you fight like a woman!
They're used as insults, but it's obviously playing off the mystery. Though Engineer does call Pyro both son and boy as well.
Speak up next time, boy. You look a mite tongue-tied, son.
Text on the old main menu would sometimes refer to Pyro as her. In the transcript of Meet the Pyro, Scout apparently says, "He's not here is she." A cloud in the shape of the Venus symbol, which is used as the female sign, can also be seen in Meet the Pyro. One of Pyro's employees at Frontier Engineering refers to Pyro as Sir. And then there's this whole great scene in the comic A Cold Day in Hell. And it may or may not be relevant, but in the comic Old Wounds, the Team Fortress Classic Pyro was confirmed to be a woman. And there are several instances of Pyro being referred to as he by other characters. In fact, I don't think there's ever been a time where another character in the TF2 universe has referred to Pyro using a feminine pronoun. For the most part, the majority of the hints have been leaning towards Pyro being female. But that's most likely because there's no immediate reason to question Pyro's gender just by looking at it. All of the other mercenaries are male, and Pyro doesn't look or sound particularly feminine, but neither did the TFC Pyro. It's a person in a fireproof suit. That's all we know. I guess maybe we don't even technically know that, but most likely a person in a fireproof suit. And obviously Pyro is voiced by a man, but that doesn't really mean anything. Dennis Bateman himself claims to not know Pyro's gender. And yeah, Pyro was pretty clearly male in the concept art, but Demoman was also white in his concept art. So, things change. And yes, before it inevitably gets brought up, I am aware of the game theory video on this subject. And it does bring up some fairly interesting points, I guess. Assuming you've seen the video, their theory relies very heavily on characters in the TF2 universe having proportions in line with that of real humans, and the Pyro being in, like, a skin-tight suit. Two things that aren't necessarily accurate. I don't think you could properly tell the size of someone's body or fingers while they're wearing an asbestos suit and thick gloves. But it was just a theory. Yeah. At the end of the day, will we ever know? Probably not. Do we actually want to know? I don't know, do you? I personally think it's better left unknown. You don't want to ruin the mystery. In fact, it's likely that the writers themselves and the characters in-universe don't even know. So I doubt we'll get anything more than just hints. Though I think my theory that Pyro is actually Trevor from Two Fort is pretty airtight. You might want to look into that one. And now it's time for a timeline of all of the important events in the Pyro's life that we know of. And as a surprise to no one, this won't be very long. In 1968, the Pyro, along with 8 other mercenaries, are hired by Red and Blue to fight the Gravel Wars. The administrator hires a director to unknowingly keep tabs on the mercenaries by filming them and interviewing them. This leads to segments of Meet the Pyro, despite Pyro not actually being interviewed itself. At some point, around Christmas time, a rocket crash lands into a building that Pyro and Engineer are in. In the rocket, they find space weapons from another dimension. In 1971, Medic and Engineer discover that the mercenaries may be getting tumors as a result of teleportation. Teleportation apparently mutates bread and results in a giant bread monster. Pyro shoots at it with his flamethrower during the fight scene, and does pretty much nothing else in that short. Later that year, Redman and Plutarch Man are killed by Grey Man, leaving the mercenaries out of a job. Saxon Hale then hires Pyro and the team to defend Manco from Grey Man's robots. In 1972, Grey Man takes control of Manco. The team disbands, and Pyro ends up as CEO of Frontier Engineering, leading them to their best quarter ever. Pyro leaves its CEO job to return to the team with Soldier and Miss Pauling. After rescuing Spy and Scout, Pyro, Soldier, and Scout head to Russia to get Heavy to rejoin the team. Pyro, Miss Pauling, Demo, Spy, Sniper, Jana, and Soldier then head to New Zealand to try to find any remaining Australian. The Team Fortress Classic mercenaries, and Medic, track them down and capture them. They are brought back to Grey Gravel Co. They escape and get back up from Saxon Hale and the others. Pyro kills the TFC Soldier and Scout, they beat the TFC team, And that's where it ends for now. And that was the complete history of Pyro. Wow. Did anybody expect this video to be as long as it was? I know I didn't. Though I guess a big chunk of this video wasn't so much about the history of the character, but like a mystery about it. But I hope someday we actually get to learn more about the Pyro without revealing too much about its identity. Maybe like a story of Pyro's past told from someone else's perspective? Or even a place of origin, or a name, or anything really. But next time, I guess we have to wrap up the first part of the series with Soldier. And that's gonna be a pretty long video, I already know that. But until then, peace out, dogs.